We have the gentleman over here.
Hi, Karvan Veerasinghe from MOQ Digital. The question is more for Dr. Dutta, and it's about red tape and lost opportunities. I think two keywords that were used today. Given that you will be, I guess, briefing government folks in the next session, what would your advice be to them in terms of some of this red tape? And I have a very personal experience because I am associated with a person who is trying to roll out smart city, a smart city technology solution, and he's just getting caught up in the red tape. And they've gotten all the necessary approvals, but it's now again in review by this government entity. What would you recommend to them? Because I understand what Mr. Dulit also says. Hey, if you can't be part of the solution, we would like you to get away, but we understand government has to play some sort of role. And the example you gave about Mr. Bloomberg, I mean, there was a lot that he contributed to it. So what would your recommendation be to our government officials?
So, my general recommendation to government leaders everywhere, including in Sri Lanka probably later in the afternoon, is to help them understand that innovation requires the leadership. If they don't actually take some leadership role, I'm not saying own the whole process, but at least play the critical element of leadership and stimulating that process, they will not be able to succeed in creating the kind of wealth and prosperity that they all achieve or they all want to achieve in their countries. That leadership requires them to set up some structures, whatever appropriate structures might be for the country, devise some strategies for the country, and very important, make life simple. So simplicity is very important, and often I think trying to make life simple can be a complex process, and we make it more complex for us than what is required. So if they can just focus on trying to make life simple for entrepreneurs, for business leaders, I think a lot can be achieved. Some countries like Singapore have devised the whole philosophy of government on making life simple for the citizen and for the business, so they can hopefully look at a few examples and learn from that. But a lot can be done with relatively modest effort, provided the determination is there from the top to push it through. And one case in point in India is Prime Minister Modi. He made that a priority very explicitly at the top, pushed that at the state level. Now different state level indices are in place for doing business. And now all the states are competing for saying, okay, we are number one in doing business in India, and come and invest in our state because we are the easiest in doing business. So transparency of metrics, celebrating the ones that make progress, and rewarding them for that is another way of trying to help make things simpler. But I only think that focus is very important on trying to make life simple for businesses and entrepreneurs.
Next questions from the audience. No? So we have two here in front. The lady here. Excuse.
Okay. I'm Prasad Nanekara. This question is for Dulit because he has built a very successful business that we all talk about, that we all know about. Can you talk about, especially in the early stages, some of the setbacks you face and how you overcame that? Because I think in our culture, dealing with failures and dealing with setbacks is not properly understood, and a lot of people don't understand how businesses really get built. I think they will look at you and say, wow, look at where is Kapruko today, and that's certainly where we want to be 10 years down the line. But the road to that success would have filled with quite a bit of these situations. So can you tell us a bit about, especially for the benefit of a lot of entrepreneurs who are present today?
if I had to pick two reasons how I fought that issue was, number one, I was always willing to change the business model. Even if you take the latest startup, the Grasshoppers that I'm doing, I've changed the business model like 15 times, literally, within 1.5 years, completely. So it's extremely agile, and we change sometimes every month. So we are not stubborn on our thinking. And second point is, we always did a lot of pilots without rushing into the market, right? So we always did a controlled pilot, believed in it, and then only scale it up. I think those are two very important points that I can summarize. Thanks.
A question from the lady in front.
Morning. So I'm from Virtusa. My name is Nadisha. What I really wanted to ask was, particularly from our Sri Lankan entrepreneurs, is that to add to what Prasad said earlier on, in terms of once you actually get an idea out, how do you actually want to get the message across to these young entrepreneurs on sustainability? How do they actually take their idea forward? And I think it's not just a lack of fearing that their IP might get caught somewhere else, but also wondering, can I take this to the next step? Do I know what to do in terms of managing the whole thing? So if you can share some ideas on how that can be taken forth, I think that'd be helpful. Thank you.
I'll give it a quick shot and give it back to you. I think there's no one-size-fits-all answer to that. It really depends on the type of idea you have. But as an entrepreneur, you always should be able to see a little further. You should be a little taller than the rest of your group, so you can see far. And you can actually see it. You are going to have to get the guys around you also to believe in what you are seeing. So you need to feel like you are that tall guy with that idea only that you can see.
Yeah, one more thing, I think you have to believe in a lot of teamwork. So it's if you are the entrepreneur, and if you have one talent skill set, you have to always get that. Maybe if you don't have certain other skill set, you have to make sure that you get as a partner, or maybe as an advisor. You have to look at that. It's really important. So it's a teamwork that really works. So if you can't work in a team, it's difficult to do, start your own thing. So that's, I think, the main thing.
More questions from the audience? The middle and back have been a little silent. Anyone there who'd like to pose a question to any of our panelists? Maybe until you think, okay, we have one there.
Hi, my name is Niluka. I'm from HSBC. My question is for Heminder. You mentioned that you have to move out of Colombo and to get that sort of boot camps going on. And you mentioned Jaffna as one of them. But my question was, we also have to increase the supply of the ideas that come in, so you have more of a selection. Because that, and education and as well as, I think, exposure and accessibility are things that are required to get those sort of ideas. How do we grow the demand out of Colombo, given that obviously education and things like that, when you go further off, is not as, vital, I would say.
I think it's, if you really look at it, it's wherever that is good ideas have come, it's not because of the knowledge level or education level. It's always when you get a diverse set of people working together in one environment. So you have to get that diversity. Even if you're a startup, if 3 people, you have to have that diversity. So if you only pick, say, 3 software engineers working on one project, you will never get that product to the next level. So that's something that I believe in a lot. So you have to get the diversity. The diversity could be the male, female, the gender, could be people from different background, maybe people from different areas. So it can be not just Sri Lanka, maybe if we can get people from outside Sri Lanka, so more people from outside Sri Lanka work in projects, say, even if it is Colombo or Jaffna, wherever, if we can get more foreigners working in our startups, I think that's where we can really go one step beyond. So I think that's where the ideas can create. You can recreate ideas. Ideas are not that important. More important is the people. So if you have the right people in, you can create thousands of ideas.
Okay, we have 2 questions there at the back. One right at the back. I think it's Arul, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So over there, and then we'll come to you, ma'am. Yeah.
First of all, this is probably not I'd rather not tell you which organization I'm from. I want to ask the panelists you all are entrepreneurs and you've been through that. How do you change a traditional organization that's been there for, let's say, hundreds of years? How do you make them think at board level, the change that they need to go through to get onto this new world? And how do you, it's a struggle. So how do you get that change happening at the board level is what I would like somebody to answer.
Harsha, go.
That's the most impossible task. So I'll tell you one. I'm actually a council member of national education for the last 6 months or so. So I'm thinking I'm going to get a brick and hit my head. Just to change the people is unbelievably different. But I think, so the education structure, we want to change the entire education in this country. So we wanted to get rid of all the tuition-based education, taught-based education, and to change it to become very innovative so that they can pick and choose whatever they want to learn, and they can make a career out of it. So we're trying to get rid of some of the exams and all that. So we create all these things. Suddenly, you get the next moment, you get a bunch of guys coming up with new syllabus. What is this for? Right, so surviving in this kind of archaic organization is a very difficult task. But what I thought what we can do now is to get young guys recruited and ask them to be the change. So if you're going to go there and change the old donkeys, it's never going to happen, right? But the best thing to do is to get the young guys to do the slow changes and empower them. Once you empower them, that's what I actually do that one in Nanotech Park as well. Empower the younger guys to go there and take some risks and do a change in that organization. And then I tell them very clearly, don't disturb the old dogs. If you don't disturb them, they're not going to bark at you, right? So if you try to disturb their normal culture, the way they behave, they come at about 10 o'clock in the morning, they do all the things they want to do, they have a lunch for about 2 hours, and they go at about 4 o'clock, and if you disturb that they go there and bring the children and all that, then they are going to go against you. So the best way I think you can change and go with the new culture is to get new guys, younger guys, and slowly empower them and not disturb in the older generation and the culture, and then I think we already has a fighting chance of changing.
Dutta? Soumitra, you want to go first?
Yeah, so I do a lot of my work with large existing organizations worldwide, and the issue of digital transformation, digital innovation is very high on the agenda. So it's not a new issue that is faced only in companies in Sri Lanka. What are some things that we can learn from other examples? I think, in organizations, especially large organizations, there is no revolution. Revolutions don't take place. So it doesn't really matter. A lot of young people who want change, if the top does not see the change, no change is going to happen. So somehow you have to have the leadership at the top becoming aware that the digital transformation or the innovation or disruptions, whatever you want to call it, is here to stay, is real, and needs attention. Luckily, what is happening is the digital innovation, transformation, disruption story is so widespread and so much talked about that it is not hard to convince the top that something has to happen. The second question is, how do you actually make the change happen? And there are no, easy one solution fits all kind of approaches. If I had to put them in sort of 3 different buckets, one bucket would be an internal driven approach. A lot of it might revolve around creating innovation teams, innovation managers, celebrating marketplace for innovations inside the company. So get people inside the company to somehow promote innovation and select them and have a process for putting them in practice. A second bucket would be what Cornell Tech represents, create a green field. So it's a separate organization. You can put innovative practices out there. You can seed it with some current people, bring in new people, and essentially it is part of the organization, but it's a greenfield kind of an approach. a third approach, which is very commonly used in high-tech industry, where the speed of change is much more rapid, is to have a very active market intelligence function inside the organization that is constantly scanning the environment for which new startups are emerging in which part of the world that can potentially add value or disrupt your business, take strategic stakes in them at the right moment, build a partnership with the right ones, and selectively acquire them in-house at the right moment and integrate them inside your core business. So virtually all the major players, be it Microsoft or Google or any of these players, they do that. They have a very active market intelligence function because they know even Microsoft cannot actually manage that pace of innovation in the industry. They have to acquire innovation from the outside. So that acquisition process and scanning function is extremely important. So those are the three different categories. But none will happen if the leadership is not aware of it.
Yeah.
If I had to pick one thing I find in boardroom problems is the egos. Any board has egos. So what I do, one thing is that I always try to crash these egos by accepting my own faults sometimes. So look guys, I think, I also join them and say, look guys, I think we are all dinosaurs. Let's try to believe in the younger guys. Look what we are getting all these things wrong. So crashing the egos has always worked very well for me in boardrooms.
If I can cheat a little bit on my role as moderator and become a panelist for 2 minutes to give you a response also on that. So I serve on the board of 3 financial services companies, which, at least in Sri Lanka, are usually not the most innovative, as many of us experience. But one thing, a few reflections I have to answer that question is, the first is, a lot of our companies need to be behaving a little bit more like the kind of companies that Dutta talked about. So I'll give you an example what I mean by that. Boards are inherently risk averse. So if you come with a grand IT plan with a thundering budget, completely untested, your CTO or IT guy comes with this plan, there's skepticism all around. But if you demonstrate that we've iterated, gone to the market a little bit, tested, adapted, tested, adjusted, and piloted, and here's the result, and if we do more of this, if you give us the money, this is what could happen. I think that's a really good way of convincing. I don't think a lot of companies do that. We wait till the cake is completely baked and then go asking the board for a lot of money. I think the other is maybe we don't do enough to have our people get infected. Oftentimes we try to, in these older companies, we try to set up innovation teams with the people inside. We then give them instructions and visions and ask them to draw P&Ls, but we don't let them get truly infected with that innovative culture. And a lot of companies that even Soumitra talked about are sending their people outside to get infected. In Berlin, in some of the co-working spaces like Beta House, you have Lufthansa, German railways, some of the oldest behemoth companies saying, you know what, if our innovation teams are going to be in the company, they're just going to behave a little bit differently. We're going to send them out to these co-working spaces and get infected. But also remembering that when they come back, you have to kind of give them some leeway and give them the environment in which to thrive. So I think maybe we and Sri Lanka has a lot of these companies, older companies that now are under pressure to innovate, but it can't always come from within, and with its partnerships with startups, or we know some companies are part of Venture Frontier, trying to get infected, and I think finding ways of getting infected is important. Sorry, I overstepped there, being a panelist myself. Any other questions before we move towards the final? Yes, sorry.
Yes, I'm Rangika from IFS, and I was thinking that when it's come to innovate, it is not something that we can develop within ourselves at one night. It is something that we have to develop over time. But when it comes to our school system, we have limited space for to children to try out this innovation. We don't support that much in this our school system. So what we can do more to give our children to develop this capability within themselves from the childhood.
I think that's probably a good comment and a segue into something I wanted to pose earlier. We keep having these conversations with individuals. I know I've had separate chats with Ruindu, Chandli, others, about this talent question, changing the culture. And I spoke to someone from a leading IT company just before this session and said, what do you need to grow 10x over the next few years? Because you guys have a great product, I'm so excited. And he said, it's the people, we can't find the people. Now I'm confused. On one hand, we are saying, we have this ingenuity, we are seeing this excellence everywhere, not just in Colombo now, across the country. But we're still saying we can't find the talent. What really is the challenge here and how do we fix it? Heminder, Harsha, and Dulit. This talent question, is it just a numbers? Is it we're not paying the right salaries and our folks are leaving? What really is it, Heminder? What really is it, Harsha? What can we do to fix this? Because if we have really ingenious, innovative companies that have the potential to grow globally, but it's been constrained by talent, we need to start addressing that really fast, right?
So is it the answer to that lady's question?
Both.
Yeah,
so
both. Yeah. Okay. So to answer that question, I think I work with 12-year-olds on design thinking, which I started about a few months back. So now I'm working with 12-year-olds on to tackle world's greatest problems. So this is a sort of thing that I learned from one of the founders of Google X. So this entire design thinking. So when you work in groups, this diverse set of groups, even children, right, 12-year-olds, when they put into some task, some of the ideas that they came were marvelous. I mean, I couldn't believe that some students came up with ideas that I couldn't have even thought, I mean, maybe even at this stage. So you have to really give that independence even for the little children, and to come up with this, so if the school system doesn't support this sort of innovative thinking, so what you can do is let them play in a group. So for example, because Sri Lanka's education system is highly individualistic. So from the scholarship exam to A-levels to everything, it's about you only. So let them play on their own with other children. So if you can recreate that at least at the home school, in your home environment, I think you can recreate these innovative capabilities. I think that if the school system doesn't allow you, let the parents handle it.
And Harsha and Dulit, on this question of the broader talent question for this sector, for the economy.
Okay, so it's a big problem for everybody. So anyway, I'm in the National Institute of Education, so trying to change education for the last 6 months. So at the moment now, the government has bought into it, that we need a change. And then the people behind that also bought into it that we need to change. Right? So we said that we don't need the very young age, we don't need what do you call it, this grading, you are the first in the class and all that, and we need to take it off. We have to take it off all the exams, because exams-based education, content-based education. So now they all are up to taking those things off. So
well, that's been a great discussion. I hope you agree with me. Lots of
top. When the children goes there, they can go there and do what they really like doing. So we are slowly trying to move into that and slowly trying to get out of this thought-based education and exam-based education. So the government side and the people behind it is already taken up with it. We are slowly taking the steps towards that. But now our biggest problem is now not the government and not the people behind that. Biggest problem is the parents. Since parents come there and say, I want to make my child a doctor. So what for? And they don't know. I want to change my child for this one, the lawyer, and this thing. I said, hold on a minute. Your child would not have a job. Lawyers have been replaced by roles in US. 70% has been taken off. Doctors' job have been taken off by a lot of artificial intelligence today. So why do you really want to have your child a doctor or lawyer? So what I'm actually saying, this one institute like SLASSCOM can actually educate the parents. And if you educate the parents, and the parents will allow us to do the changes into the education system. We all understand that we need a huge change, and we are all prepared to do the change. So the hindrance is right now is actually the the parents. And the last thing I want to tell you is, like you said, that they wanted to protect their ideas and stuff like that. It's because, again, the fundamental problem of our education, because whenever you go to school, we wanted to, our parents want to become first in the class. And if you don't become the first in the class, and the mother says, like, look at next door guy, he's actually being the first in the class, you are not, and we have a huge problem. And because of that reason, even though you are my best friend, I envy you, because if you become the first in the class, and then what happens is, like, my mother is going to tell me off, right? So since we are young, we learn that particular thing, and our brains have been inculcated for that. Not because I have a problem with you. I mean, if you drive a Ferrari, I have a serious problem, because my mother is going to say, look at that guy is driving a Ferrari, and you still don't have a Ferrari. So I am fear of my mother, not because I have any problem with you. So that has to be changed. So that has to be changed fundamentally. So only way that we can change fundamentally is changing that education, so that we are not grading, we are not segmenting any of them in the very, very young age. So that's what I think we had to do.
I wholeheartedly agree with these two guys. We have that problem. But there's one more thing I want to add is we have a lot of self-confidence problems in the youth, especially when you go out of Colombo. There are 43 big towns in Colombo. As you correctly said, we are all too much Colombo-centric. There are 43 large towns like Madhara, Gaul, Ratnapura, etc. Where the same, human talent is there, the same brains are there, but they don't have the self-confidence. So I've gone to a few universities trying to promote e-commerce and get them to, do SME e-commerce companies. And I see when I'm in Colombo, it's different. When I'm out there, they don't look eye to eye. They look down. I'm very sad to see that. I had to isolate them, get a guy or two out into a corner, talk to them, and they flourish. So it's just amazing. These guys have, high IQ, 4 A's, all these things, but it's about the self-confidence. So I wish that if that can be fixed or, worked on in some way, like getting them into a corner and, giving them self-confidence, that can immediately open up a huge floodgate of talent.
So I think there are some interesting messages coming out, apart from the policy stuff that Soumitra talked about to grow innovation across the economy. We heard about some of the things related to that entrepreneurs must do, but also some of these soft things that we tend to underestimate the importance of, whether it's the touching these attitudes of parents and pushing back on that, or whether it's, as you said, on the self-confidence, because these will ultimately filter down into determining whether Sri Lanka becomes a truly innovation-driven economy or not. It's not only going to be the hardware. So the time has been flashing red for a little while now, so I'm going to end there. I want to ask you just in a couple of seconds to answer this for me, each of you, very snappy, short response. And I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to make sure the government question is first, so that we end up with what's really important with the question around an entrepreneur. So Soumitra, what is the one piece of advice you'd give to Sri Lanka to rise up to the top 30 rank on the GII within the next decade?
My advice would be, don't focus on the ranking so much, for the reasons given earlier, but focus on trying to leverage the best potential of your people.
Heminder, what is the one thing that you think will be a game changer to enriching the ecosystem in Sri Lanka?
I think ecosystem comes with a lot of people. So forget about, Professor Dutta. So you have this eight various attributes that comes with this innovation ecosystem. But my point of view, the only thing that will change is not technology, not government. It's about you. It's about the mindset. It's about the attitude of the people. So if you can change that, so basically, it's okay you born in a country which is developing country. But if you die in a developing country, that's the problem. That's your problem. So it's your problem to change it. So I think it's the attitude that is the most important.
Dulit, what is the one thing we need to do to make innovation truly inclusive in Sri Lanka?
I'll speak in my sector of e-commerce. I think the most important thing is to look at cross-border trading. If you are just locally focused, that's not going to get us anywhere. It's really about global trading. And so cross-border e-commerce is a huge thing on my list.
and Harsha, ending up with where Ruindu started off saying today is about the entrepreneurs who have made a change, the companies who have driven this sector. What is the one main mantra you live by personally as an entrepreneur to drive real innovation and drive change?
I mean, it's the only thing, it's like the passion. So without the passion, you can't do anything. And getting, if you get a bunch of passionate guys, you can change this country. So, so that's the only thing. I think how do you create the passion is a question mark. So I'm also trying to find ways of doing it. But once you know the passion, they will drive the entire thing.
Thank you, and that's a great note as any to end. Thank you very much for your patience and your great questions, and thank you to my panelists. Thank you, SLASSCOM.
Provoking ideas shared, lots of eye-opening insights that our panelists have truly opened up with. So once again, we'd like to thank all of you for your very interactive engagement with our speakers. And of course, once again, thank you to Professor Soumitra Dutta, Mr. Dulit Herath, Dr. Harsha Subasinghe, Mr. Heminder Jayavira, and our moderator, Mr. Anushka Vijay Singh. Can we please give them a huge round of applause and appreciate their presence?